This week, I just wanted a lighthearted conversation. And I started thinking about some stuff, and I was just like, you know what? Our ancestors survived the worst conditions with nothing but a prayer and some shea butter. No Whole Foods, no wellness retreats, no organic oat milk or almond milk. Just faith, resourcefulness, remedies passed down through generations. And that got me thinking a little bit like, why are we out here debating whether our smoothie has to have the right pH balance? Paying for yoga mats that are $200 that could do the same thing as a blanket, burning sage, and kind of not everyone knowing what it's for. And I know my ancestors, especially, I can see them now. They're probably out there side-eyeing us, probably thinking, girl, what are you doing? We are in the midst of a beautifully Black History Month. We've had the Super Bowl. I'm in the Bay Area. We had the NBA All-Star games, and it just feels like the energy has been feeling good this month. And so it got me thinking, with all the ways that we've tried to perfect wellness, have we actually just made this more complicated? Because honestly, I don't know. It feels like our people have been practicing wellness way before wellness became an industry. But somehow we've made it this big, expensive thing that has to look and feel a certain way. And there's all these rules you got to follow that I don't honestly think make sense. And I think, again, our ancestors would throw mad shade at us. So today, we're asking the question, if your ancestors sat at the kitchen table and watched your wellness routine, would they be nodding in approval, or would they be throwing mad shade and clowning you? Welcome to the Hello Well with Danielle podcast, your weekly mental vacation from the daily grind for busy Black women who just need a moment to pause, breathe, and find a little freedom when life feels impossible. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. We've been taught to believe like wellness has been this new thing, something that we have to learn, we got to buy, we got to perfect. But the truth is, our people have been doing wellness for generations. They may not have called it self-care. They didn't call it self-care. They didn't call it nervous system regulation. But trust me, they were doing the work. Even in the middle of slavery, they had their way of taking care of themselves. They had their own wellness routines. So before we get into what they wouldn't approve of and would definitely start roasting our wellness practices, let's take a moment to give some credit where credit is due. Our ancestors had some wellness practices that were so on point, we're still doing them today. And so let's talk about those first. Like, for example, herbal teas and natural remedies were the thing to go to. Now, they weren't calling them aptogens, and they weren't calling them these medicinal herbs, but they were just like, drink this ginger tea and lay down. Like, for example, ginger ale was the go-to. I'm not saying it's herbal, but ginger ale was supposed to fix everything. The premises was using ginger could help your stomach, could help in many different ways. But our ancestors knew ginger was bae. And also, resting on Sundays. They took that seriously. Unlike today's culture where we're always feeling like we need to hustle, we're always working, they had no problem being Sunday is the day of the Lord. Sunday is the day that I am resting. And I kind of feel like that's still something that many of us can do, and we'd still do. We'd call it Self-Care Sunday, but for them it was just the day of the Lord. The other one I like to think about is they wrapped their heads. And wrapping their heads wasn't just to protect their hair. It wasn't just fashion. It was also a spiritual shield. They were using wrapping their head in head wraps for energy protection, which we still do today. They also listened to their bodies instead of overthinking wellness. They didn't have to listen to a biohacking podcast. They just knew when they needed to eat, when they needed some food, and they ate the food. When they needed to rest, they rested. And when they needed movement, they moved. They listened to their bodies. And I think we are doing that. So I want to give us credit to, even though, yes, we are using all these apps and different things to help us figure these things out, we are still listening to our bodies. And I want to give us credit for doing that. Another one I think about is walking barefoot. Now, some of our relatives have been like, why would you walk barefoot? definitely not outside. But they still did do it. Like grounding still was something. So there wasn't some scientific term behind it, but they knew that connection to the earth, to, the ground was important for us. And energetically, there was something powerful behind that. And so I think about things like that. I think about dancing and singing as a form of therapy. Gospel music, anyone? Like, it was just healing, and it still is healing. So we are still using some of these things that I feel like our ancestors are like, okay, I'm going to rubber stamp approval of these wellness practices that you're doing today. And by looking at these, it's clear to see our ancestors were onto something. They didn't need a whole wellness industry to tell them, this is how you need to rest. This is how you need to nourish yourself. This is how you need to move your body. They just lived. And honestly, some of the things we do today in the name of wellness would have some of them literally side-eyeing us in a way, or just laughing. They're probably up in the sky, laughing together as if it's the most funniest thing they've seen. Because they're like, baby, what are you doing? What are you doing out there? I just hear my grandmother, me telling her, so grandma, I spent $200 on a yoga mat. She'd be out there, so let me get this straight. You bought an expensive piece of foam to lay on the ground when you could have got a blanket, a pillow, or some towels. Yeah, I'm sure she'd be like, I don't see it. And she would definitely side-eye me on that. I think she would throw mad shade about that. Our ancestors didn't need a name brand mat to stretch. They just found a spot and they just did it. Mobility was a part of their everyday life. I think another one that some ancestors would probably throw shade about is buying an expensive juicer when you don't even eat vegetables. I haven't done that. I'm very proud of myself, but I have bought this expensive blender that I was like, I'm going to use this to juice. It's $500. I'm going to make my celery juice but then you're not buying the vegetables to go in that, and you're also just not eating vegetables in general. Like, instead of juicing everything, they just made vegetables. They made collard greens. They made all type of things, and they ate the vegetables. And honestly, eating vegetables is good for you. You don't need to blend it up, juice it out. Same thing with, replacing real food with powder supplements. I can hear them saying, so, okay, let me get this straight. Instead of eating actual greens, you're drinking grass-flavored powder on purpose? Yeah. Our ancestors cooked whole foods, fresh foods. They didn't go to Whole Foods. A lot of them had the gardens. They weren't drinking mystery powder smoothies for optimal gut health. They just ate vegetables. And it kind of worked for them for the most part, because they would have known and they would have told us that half of those powdered things that we're creating are just overpriced versions of what's already in our kitchen or what you can get at the grocery store. Yes, we're paying for convenience. Yes, we have a different life than our ancestors, but I still think they would still be throwing shade at us. Now, this next one might be a little controversial, but I'm just going to throw it out there anyway. One of the things I think that they would throw shit at us is if we were doing this. So if we're charging your crystals in the full moon, but you're still texting your ex. I can hear them saying, so, you're clearing your energy, but you're inviting the bad vibes back through those text messages? Yeah. Crystals are great. Love some crystals. I charge my crystals all the time. But crystals aren't going to fix what you keep allowing back in your life. And our ancestors knew that. You don't need protection stones. You need some stronger boundaries. I know that's what my grandmother would say. She was like, you don't need those little stones over there, girl. You need some stronger boundaries in your life. I also thinking back to my grandmother and her thinking about how, I meditate all the time, and I think she'd be happy that I was meditating, but I think she would think about like, okay, you're meditating for all these hours, but you're ignoring your real problems. Like, sitting still for 2 hours is cute, but did you handle that thing you've been avoiding over there? And like when I find myself procrastinating, I kind of hear her voice saying that to me. Because yes, meditation is powerful, but it doesn't replace accountability. Our ancestors meditated while they worked, but they also found time not to avoid stuff in their lives. And again, we can sit here and laugh. This is all fun and games about all the wild things that we do in the name of wellness. But let's talk about what's really happening, like underneath all of this, because there's something really going on. Because behind the expensive mats, the overpriced juicers, a lot of us actually are still struggling with the same thing. We're overcomplicating our wellness to the point to where it doesn't even feel good anymore. It doesn't even feel like wellness. It feels like another job. And that's exactly what we're talking about on today's What's Blocking You segment. If you're new to the show, this is the part of the show where we uncover the sneaky ways we're getting in our own way of our own well-being and figuring out what's blocking us. Somewhere along the way, wellness became this thing that we needed to perfect. The right products, the right routine, the right way to heal. We need to try to add in so much into it. And I had a client who was trying to do that exact same thing. She was struggling because she thought she had to do everything right. She was meditating in the morning. She had to have the perfect diet. She had the perfect breath work, affirmations, sound bath, manifesting candles, the right clothes, all the things. And yet when she came to me, she was like, I'm doing all these things, but I'm still tired. I still feel stuck. I still feel overwhelmed. And I listened to her, and it was pretty easy for me to kind of like figure out where to start. We started with stripping everything back to the basics. I gave her one simple thing she can do and have her do something she actually enjoyed doing. So for her, it was doing a morning meditation. It wasn't trying to have her force doing morning meditation, doing some energy healing, then juicing, and then doing this exercise routine. We started off with just a meditation and kept it real simple, kept it under 3 minutes. And because I'm a strong believer in mixing mind, body, and energy, I wanted to give her a meditation that wasn't just her sitting there, she wasn't just breathing. It was a meditation where she was using a mudra, she was also chanting, and she was also kind of in this space where she was using her breath. So she was able to work on the energetics, she was able to work on the mind, and also work on the body. And doing this consistently for 3 minutes for 40 days, she noticed a difference. We started then adding other things on. And what she learned, when you're able to get out of your own way of thinking everything, especially your wellness routine, has to be perfect and it has to look a certain way, and stop overcomplicating it, it stopped feeling like a job for her. It stopped feeling like it was too much for her to do, and it felt good. So when she had that win with doing small consistency things, she was then able to expand it out to doing a lot more. And she stopped feeling tired. She stopped feeling overwhelmed in that struggle feeling. And she started feeling a lot better. And so that is today's What's Blocking You segment of the podcast episode. At the end of the day, y'all, like wellness isn't something new to any of us. It's not new to our ancestors. It's in our bones. It's in our blood. It's the things our ancestors were already doing before Whole Foods existed, before self-help books existed, before self-care became a billion-dollar industry. So the real question I pose to all of us is, the question really isn't, is your wellness routine right? But whether your wellness routine feels right for you. And the key part of that sentence is for you. Like, yes, our ancestors could simplify wellness in a way that worked for them, and they didn't need all the things that we use. I'm not saying the things that we use are bad, because yeah, it helps us in a way that we can use today's technology. You can use ChatGPT to help you create a wellness plan. But I ask you to really ask yourself, am I overcomplicating things? Do I need all these things? Am I overthinking this? Or can I simplify this to make it feel better for me? And that's the real question. All right, See you guys next week. Ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hello Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hello Well Danny on Twitter. And if you like hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.